So today's discussion was looking at motivation at work. And you see a picture of Sigmund Freud here, and the beginning of the chapter really focuses on, or the beginning of this section rather, really focuses on how, according to Freud, the healthy life is filled by work and by love. And I know a lot of you guys can relate to this, especially in our adulthood years. When you think of people's quality of life and their level of satisfaction, it largely is based on the relationships they have with family and friends and their job. So today we're going to take a look at a lot of different things that factor into motivation in the workplace. First off, we look at the attitudes towards work. People do vary in their attitude. Some people look at it as a job, which is simply a necessary way to make money. They may not find it personally satisfying, and if they didn't get paid, it's very likely they wouldn't go to work. Another attitude towards work deals with looking at it as a career. People in this situation find that they have opportunities to advance from one position to another. There's room for growth, there's room for promotion, and they find that they enjoy what they do, or they find that they have a purpose and find it fulfilling. Ultimately, the most ideal situation is finding your work to be considered a calling. They find that they make a difference in the world. It's a very purposeful job that a lot of times in those scenarios, they don't even mind if they do it without pay. That's how rewarding it is. Many of you know people in that scenario, luckily, that they go to work and they couldn't imagine themselves in any other job, and it's super fulfilling. When people have such a positive attitude towards their career, they may find that sometimes they have what's called flow. And it's an experience between no work and a lot of work. Flow marks an immersion into one's work. So it's when a person becomes completely involved and focused on their task at hand. They have diminished self-awareness and sometimes don't even realize that they're hungry or that hours have passed, because they're optimally engaging in their skill, their passion. Some of you may experience flow when you play video games, when you listen to music, when you are working on something that you love. Maybe it's, your hands inside an engine, or, sculpting or painting or drawing. In jobs, in their profession, sometimes we see it happen with, artists and musicians or surgeons that lose track of time because they're so passionate about what they're doing and so focused. Ideally, everyone in the classroom, everyone listening to this, will get into a career and find that they are called to what they do and are so passionate that they can experience flow. There is a subfield of psychology called industrial organizational psychology that focuses on optimizing human behavior in the workplace. This is something we talked about at the very beginning of the year during the prologue, and it's going into a little bit more depth in this chapter. So this relatively newer branch of psychology focuses on creating environments in the workplace in which people are happy and healthy and highly productive. There are two subdivisions or subfields, one called personnel psychology. This is the subfield of industrial organization psychology that focuses on things like employee recruitment, selection, placement, training, appraisal, and development. So sometimes companies will hire a personnel psychologist and pay them a stipend so that they can come in and they can get the best candidates employed by their company so they can be productive. The organizational side of IO psychology examines organizational influences on worker satisfaction and productivity, and they facilitate organizational change. So if you were, an IO psychologist that focused on the organizational piece, you might, look at a company and how maybe even the layout of the cubicles or the lighting. They might look at how their company could change to best meet the needs of their employees so that their employees came to work happy, liking who they were working with, and produced the best results. Part of personnel psychologists' job is to look at the hiring process. And when you hire, you have to have a structured kind of interview. This is a process that asks the same job relevant questions of all the different applicants, and then they can compare them and rate them on established scales. And so these structured interviews will pinpoint the potential employees' strengths, their attitudes, their behaviors, knowledge, and skills. So they might, first off, analyze the job. Then they might script questions that would best bring about the top candidates, and then train the interviewer how to conduct the interview. One aspect of organizational psychology looks at motivating achievement. Achievement motivation is defined as a desire for significant accomplishment, for mastery of things, people, ideas, and for attaining a high standard. They actually use B.F. Skinner in our textbook because he was highly motivated. He was a competitor. When he was in college, he didn't focus on the social aspect. He worked on the academic piece. He set goals, he worked hard, and felt very good satisfaction, high satisfaction when he accomplished those goals. You probably know people in your life that have high achievement motivation, and they are competitive, and they work very hard to surpass others and reach their goals. Another part of this chapter looks at appraisal. And so many of you have jobs where you've been evaluated or appraised. Sometimes when people are going through this appraisal process, they find that the employer is actually biased. They might make what's called halo errors. These are when traits like friendliness overshadow actual performance. You may find that bosses will overlook a person's ability in the job because they're so nice and they don't want to criticize them. Another error would be being too lenient, or on the opposite end, too severe. So this is the evaluator's tendency to be too easy on their employees. They might be pushovers, they might have employees that walk all over them, or just the opposite. They might be too harsh, not listen to what the employee has to say as to maybe why they were late or maybe why they made a mistake. The recency error is dealing with evaluations, and this happens when evaluators focus easily on the most recent incident or the most recent behavior that wasn't ideal. And that's not fair. When you might be evaluated every 3 months, you want them to think about the whole entire 3 months, not just the latest mistake you made. And last but not least, we're looking at choosing appropriate leadership styles. Your leader takes you in the right direction. If they're considered a task leader, they are very goal-oriented. These are kinds of leaders in the workplace, employers, you could say, that set standards, they organize the work, they focus their attention on the goal. And so many of you know people who, might be working on a project for 6 months, or they have a particular product that they are trying to complete. If you have an employer that has this type of leadership style, they're keeping them on trace, they're setting small goals, working towards the larger goal, and focusing their attention on the task at hand. Social leaders tend to be more focused on the relationship piece. They build teamwork, they mediate any kind of conflict that might surface, and they offer support for working it out.